Aaron clutched the lawyer's letter. His grandfather had left him Blackwood Manor, a name whispered, not spoken, a place shrouded in childhood memories. Memories laced with fear. Aaron hadn't visited since he was a boy, not since his parents died. Blackwood Manor held shadows, secrets. Still, it was family. He had to go back. The town hadn't changed. The same oppressive silence hung in the air. It clung to the narrow streets, the shuttered houses. The townsfolk watched him pass. Their eyes were empty, cold. Aaron shivered. He gripped the steering wheel tighter. Blackwood Manor loomed ahead, a gothic silhouette against the darkening sky. The iron gates groaned open. A flock of crows erupted from the trees. Their cries echoed in the stillness. Aaron parked the car. He stepped out, hesitated. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic like old blood. The house loomed above him. Its windows were dark eyes, watching, waiting. The front door creaked open, its hinges protesting with a long, drawn-out groan. Dust motes danced in the weak sunlight, filtering through grimy windows, creating a ghostly ballet in the still air. The air inside was stale, heavy with the scent of neglect and time. Like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for something or someone. Aaron wandered through darkened rooms, his footsteps echoing softly on the wooden floors, each one filled with the ghosts of his past, memories lurking in every shadow. Furniture draped in dust sheets stood like silent sentinels, guarding the secrets of the manor. Portraits of strangers stared down from the walls, their eyes filled with stories long forgotten. Their eyes followed his every move, as if judging his presence. The house creaked and groaned around him. A symphony of age and decay, a symphony of settling wood and unseen things whispering secrets in the dark. He found his grandfather's study at the end of a long, shadowy hallway, the air growing colder with each step. The air here was colder, carrying a chill that seemed to seep into his bones. He could feel the weight of unseen eyes on his back, a sensation that made his skin crawl. He turned the tarnished brass doorknob, its cold metal sending a shiver up his spine. The door swung open with a low groan, revealing the secrets hidden within. The study was a tomb of forgotten things, a place where time stood still. Bookshelves lined the walls, crammed with leather-bound volumes that whispered of knowledge long lost. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting flickering shadows that danced on the walls. In the center of the room stood a massive mahogany desk, its surface polished to a dark sheen, and on it sat a radio, an artifact from a bygone era. Not a modern one, an antique, its design intricate and timeless. Its wooden casing was polished to a sheen, reflecting the dim light of the room. The dial glowed with an eerie internal light, as if it held a life of its own. Aaron ran a finger over the radio's smooth surface. It was strangely cold, colder than it should be. He turned the dial. Static. He tried another frequency, more static. He was about to give up when a voice broke through the white noise, a whisper, barely audible. It sent a shiver down his spine. He listened intently, straining to make out the words. The voice was faint, distorted, but there was something undeniably human about it. It spoke of shadows, of things lurking just beyond sight, of a hunger that could never be satisfied. Aaron quickly spun the dial, searching for a clear signal, but there was nothing. Only the oppressive silence of the old house. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that something was moving just beyond his peripheral vision, something cold and hungry. The shadows in the room seemed to deepen, to writhe. He told himself it was just his imagination, fueled by the isolation and the unsettling whisper from the radio. The next morning, Aaron ventured into town. He needed supplies and some way to contact the outside world. The phone lines at the manor were dead. The townsfolk watched him with the same unnerving intensity he remembered from his childhood. Their faces were etched with a strange mixture of curiosity and fear. He tried to strike up conversations to break the ice, but their responses were short, clipped. Their eyes darted nervously towards Blackwood Manor as if it held some terrible secret. He visited the general store, a dusty emporium that seemed untouched by time. The shopkeeper, a wizened old man with eyes like chips of ice, eyed him suspiciously. When Aaron mentioned the radio, the old man's face tightened. "Best leave things be," he muttered, refusing to meet Aaron's gaze. There was a warning in his voice, a plea. Aaron left the store, a knot of unease tightening in his stomach. The town was a place of secrets, and Aaron was an outsider, an intruder. Back at the manor, the silence was deafening, almost as if the house itself was holding its breath. Aaron tried to ignore it, to focus on unpacking and making the house feel like his own. He busied himself with arranging items, hoping the activity would drown out the eerie stillness, but the silence seemed to press in on him, wrapping around him like a suffocating blanket. It was broken only by the creaking of the house and the occasional whisper from the radio, which seemed to come alive in the quiet. The whispers were getting louder now, more insistent, as if they were trying to convey a message. Sometimes he could almost make out words, fragments of sentences that sent chills down his spine. They spoke of a darkness that consumed everything, a void that swallowed light and hope, of a hunger that could never be sated, an insatiable craving that gnawed at the edges of sanity. Aaron tried to convince himself it was just interference, old wiring, faulty tubes, anything but the alternative. But deep down, a primal fear was taking root, growing stronger with each passing moment. He started seeing things out of the corner of his eye, fleeting shadows that vanished when he turned to look. Shadows moving in the periphery, dancing just beyond the reach of light. He heard footsteps in the dead of night, echoing through the empty halls. The soft padding of bare feet on the wooden floor just outside his bedroom door. Sleep offered no escape from the growing dread. He was plagued by nightmares, vivid and terrifying. Visions of shadowy figures with empty eyes and mouths stretched into grotesque smiles haunted his dreams. His paranoia grew with each passing day, feeding off the whispers and shadows that seemed to close in around him. One evening, while searching for the source of a particularly foul smell, Aaron stumbled upon a hidden room in the attic. The air in the room was thick with dust and the faint scent of decay. A single flickering light bulb illuminated stacks of old journals and strange arcane symbols drawn on the floor in chalk. He picked up one of the journals. It was his grandfather's. The handwriting was spidery, filled with frantic energy. As he read, his blood ran cold. His grandfather wrote of the radio, of the voices he heard, voices that whispered of ancient evils, of a darkness that was seeping into the world through the static. He wrote of the townsfolk, their eyes glazed over with fear and something else, something sinister. He warned of a growing hunger, an insatiable appetite that could never be satisfied. The last entry ended abruptly, mid-sentence. As if his grandfather had been interrupted, the final words scrawled across the page sent a shiver down Aaron's spine. It knows I'm here. It knows. That night, the storm hit, a raging tempest that shook the manor to its foundations. The wind roared like a beast unleashed, and the sky was torn apart by relentless lightning. Rain lashed at the windows with a ferocity that seemed almost personal. Wind howled through the eaves like a banshee, its wail echoing through the empty halls. The power went out, plunging the house into an oppressive darkness. Aaron huddled in the study, the only light coming from the flickering fireplace and the eerie green glow of the radio dial, casting long, sinister shadows. He tried to ignore the whispers that seemed to seep from the walls. Tried to convince himself it was just the storm playing tricks on his mind. But the whispers were clearer now, louder. They seemed to be speaking directly to him, calling his name with an unsettling familiarity. He reached out to turn off the radio, but his hand froze mid-air. He couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. It was as if an invisible force held him in place. The static from the radio intensified, filling the room, the house, the world. It was a deafening roar that drowned out all other sounds. It was a cacophony of whispers, screams, and inhuman laughter. The noise was overwhelming, a relentless assault on his senses. In the swirling static, he saw faces. Grotesque, distorted faces with eyes that burned with cold fire. They seemed to be watching him, judging him. They reached for him, their skeletal fingers closing around his throat with a chilling grip. He could feel their cold touch like death itself. He tried to scream, but no sound escaped his lips. The static consumed him, pulling him in with an unyielding force. He felt himself falling into an abyss of darkness. The world around him faded, and all that remained was the void. The storm subsided as quickly as it had begun. Dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of purple and orange. The townsfolk emerged from their homes, their faces drawn and pale. They walked towards Blackwood Manor, a silent procession with a single purpose. They found the front door ajar. Inside, the house was silent. The only sound came from the study, the steady hiss of static. They found Aaron slumped over the antique radio, his eyes wide with terror, his face frozen in a silent scream. The radio dial glowed an eerie green. The static continued, uninterrupted, a single sentence repeated endlessly, a chilling whisper that echoed through the empty house. "He's one of us now.